You're on.
Ready? Okay. Let's restart. Let's start from the beginning, which is very appropriate because today is actually Pesach Sheni, which means the second Pesach Sheni, Passover number 2. We're so lucky as Jews that we get to celebrate Passover twice. So today's a mini Pesach. In the time when the Jewish people were in the desert, a year after they left Egypt. So it was the second time they celebrated Passover. One of the ways they celebrated is they gave a sacrifice of a lamb, and they ate the lamb, a paschal offering. So anyone who was ritually impure, like they came in contact with a dead person, or other ways that they were ritually impure, they weren't allowed to give a sacrifice. But what happens when Passover comes and you can't give a Passover sacrifice, and you can't celebrate Passover? So you want to hear how kind and good God is? The Jewish people came up to Moses and said, Moses, we can't give the sacrifice. What are we going to do? We want to celebrate Passover. We love the Passover. So Moses says, let me ask God. And he came back and he said, God was so impressed that from the bottom of your hearts, you came to God and asked him to please allow you to find a way to celebrate Passover, and he's making you another Passover just for you guys. So, it just makes you marvel at the fact that there's so many lessons you can learn, but one of them especially you can learn is that God always gives you a second chance. And in life in general, there's always the ability to pivot, to stop, kind of we learn it from a camera, right? From our phones. You stop, we say, nah, the picture wasn't that great. Let's pivot, let's sharpen, let's fix our mistakes, and let's take another picture. And so God is saying to us, every single year he reminds us, because sometimes I know I need a reminder that it's okay. You made a few mistakes. That's okay. Listen, you say, I'm sorry. Sometimes mistakes are irreparable, but you know what? You learn from them to do better next time. And there's always going to be a next time. That's what's so amazing about our lives, that we always have another chance to do better. So in honor of Passover Sheni, Pesach Sheni, we actually eat a little bit of matzah. I'm sure all of you miss matzah. We haven't had it in a month. So here's my matzah. So everybody, please take, when you have a chance, anytime today, and your kids, whoever is available, to have a little piece of matzah. And when we eat the matzah, let's have in mind that we always have a second chance. We can always do better. We can pivot. And I feel like the whole quarantine is almost like we're all in a time out. And not as a punishment, but as I want to give you a second chance. Let's stop, let's take a breath, and start again. Okay, now that we got our Pesach Sheni on our minds, let's stop, let's pivot, and usually we do dinner or appetizers. Today we're doing dessert. This dessert I've been making for, I don't know, since I was a kid. Every Shabbos, every Saturday, it was a standard that we made chocolate ganache. I think it's a Bon Appetit recipe. I actually went online. I could not find it anywhere. But regardless, I actually found the recipe in my little written recipe book. And so let's start. I want to first make sure you have all the ingredients. And once you have all the ingredients, warm up a saucepan so that we can toast our nuts. And number 2, preheat your oven to 325. You always like to make sure your oven is preheated so that it becomes the exact temperature you need when you need it. Okay, so this is actually preheating because when you toast nuts, there's 2 ways of doing it. You can either stick it in the oven, and just keep an eye on it because they toast very quickly, or you can put it on a saucepan, frying pan, whatever you need. So this is warming up because this doesn't work as great. I think it's not as strong. Let me lower it a little bit. And you basically, when you toast nuts, it's really about waking it up. In general, I don't take nuts that are raw and use them in any recipe. I always, even if the recipe doesn't say it, I always toast them. Toast them lightly. The idea is to get the oil from the nuts out. And the oil is what gives it the fat and the taste. So it kind of wakes it up. Raw nuts are good. Hashem created them. They're delicious. But then Hashem gave us the ability, God gave us the ability to kind of wake them up, right? So we all need a little bit of a wake up. So we put them on a saucepan, and I stay there. You babysit it. Don't disappear because they burn so quickly. And just wait until, you know what the trick is? As soon as you smell it, right? Remember we talked about you use your 5 senses when you cook? Smell it. As soon as you smell the heart and soul of the nut, you know it's ready and you take it off the fire. Okay, so let's talk about the ingredients. Number 1, pecans. So you use about 2 cups of pecans. This is for a 9-inch tart pan. If your tart pan is bigger, use more, then go with a recipe and a half. So I'm telling you 1 recipe. If your tart pan is even an inch or 2 bigger, like a 10-inch or an 11-inch, I recommend that you go with a recipe and a half. And if you have a little extra, first of all, I love a thick crust, but if you have extra, just stick it in a little zippy, label it, and stick it in the freezer, and you'll use it the next time. So the next time you only need to do 1 recipe plus the extra that you have in the fridge. So never throw out any extras because you'll tend to use them as long as you label them. Okay, pecans. So 2 cups of pecans. Okay, so we'll measure in a second. I just want to make sure you have all your ingredients. Cinnamon. And I recommend that the cinnamon you either use quickly or open a new cinnamon because you really want it to be, you're using a drop, so you want a pungent cinnamon taste. So I use my cinnamon so often that it doesn't matter that, well actually there's halfway. This is okay, this is halfway. But if it's the bottom of your cinnamon and you have another one, grab another one. Unless it's very new. Brown sugar. 6 tablespoons of brown sugar. I pre-measured it. By the way, sometimes if I'm doing a lot of cooking, let's say for Shabbat I'm doing a lot of cooking, so by Wednesday, sometimes this sounds a little nuts, but it really works. Sometimes I pre-measure my ingredients and put them in little mason jars. Really the best is always to label it, because if I never remember, but you pre-measure so that when you're ready to cook, you have it all pre-measured. And it really saves time. Like if I see that I have like an extra 20 minutes or a half hour, I'll just pre-measure it. Stick everything on the side and then use it when I need it, and it's so easy. And you feel like you're doing a cooking show then. Okay, the next is 1/4 of a cup margarine. And we talked about the margarine that I really like. First of all, it always has to be unsalted. And because I'm making this for a meat meal, I'm using margarine. If you're making this for a dairy meal, by all means use butter. Should be unsalted, right, so that you control the salt. And I love the Fleischmann's one. It just works right. Just does its job in a nice way, and it doesn't have a strong flavor. Okay, so 1/4 of a cup is a half a stick, right? A half a stick is a half a cup. So 1/4 of a cup is a half a stick. Okay, so the ingredients for the crust is 2 cups of pecans, 1/4 of a teaspoon cinnamon. That's why you want to use good cinnamon so you taste it. 6 tablespoons of brown sugar, and 1/4 of a cup, which is a half a stick, margarine. We're going to melt the margarine, but not quite yet, because we have a little trick how we can make it very efficient. So just wait on that. I also add a little bit of sea salt, so you can use Maldon salt, whatever. I feel like this salt and chocolate are out of this world, so I feel like it's really important to add a little bit of salt, since you're not getting salt anywhere else, not in the nuts and not in the margarine. So just add a little bit of salt. It kind of, first of all, salt always balances a recipe. It brings out the flavors in a recipe, and the combination of salt and chocolate are, wow. Okay, so that's the crust. Now for the inside, for the filling, you want whipped topping. So again, I'm using Pareve. See, it says OU Pareve. It's Rich's whipped topping. I've only seen it in kosher markets. I actually had someone come and pick it up from my house this morning. Anytime I do a recipe and there's an ingredient that is not available or not easily available, just text me and I'll get it for you. Because if I need to get it for myself, I have no problem also getting extra so that I can help you out. So this is great, especially if you're lactose intolerant or only eat dairy-free or vegan. This is really great. It does have chemicals. So again, like Maimonides teaches us, everything in moderation. So if you have a little bit, right, I think it's 80% eating healthy, 20% kind of eat what you want. So this way you live a balanced life. So this is your 20%. The next thing you want is, the filling is 2 ingredients. It's your whipped topping. If you're doing a dairy meal or a parve meal, then use regular whipping cream. Chocolate. You can use bittersweet. You can use semi-sweet. So in our house, we really like the taste of a good bittersweet chocolate. This is a very good, this is like a medium. It's not the top, it's not the lowest. Chocolate, really like balsamic vinegar, like wine, the more it costs usually means it's a better chocolate. So this aprx chocolate is a good chocolate. And it's bittersweet, and it's kosher parve. So again, if you're making a non-dairy meal, you want everything to be parve. If you're making a meal that's either parve or dairy, go ahead and use a chocolate that says OUD, which means OU dairy. Okay, so I think that we have all our ingredients. I mean, really, oh, this is my favorite ingredient, and this kind of gives a pop of flavor. It's raspberries. So I mentioned that you should already have your raspberries washed and dried. If you didn't, let's start by doing that, because if you put wet raspberries onto your chocolate, it will the wet drops will discolor the top of your chocolate. So let me show you a great trick that I saw on Ina Garden Barefoot Contessa years ago about how to wash berries. Take a bowl, fill it with water. And the reason why, by the way, you do it this way is because, especially raspberries, they're very gentle and delicate. And if the faucet water goes directly onto the berries, it will break the berries. So, especially for this recipe, I want my berries to be plump, juicy, and whole. And I know that when I serve berries, nobody touches the berries that are broken. So you'll end up having to make a jam out of them or something like that. So here's my berries. These are organic. Berries really should be organic. Don't make yourself crazy if you can't find organic. Just wash them really well. My pediatrician said to me that my kids should eat berries every single day. They're very healthy. They're very nutrient. They're just an all-around excellent choice for fruit. And so I said, well, sometimes it's hard to find organic. And she says, if you can't find organic, buy regular. Just wash it very well. It's better to eat berries that are not organic than to skip berries altogether. So we have berries every single day. I have a bowl. And remember I told you about my favorite bowl with the holes? My favorite. So after I wash them the way I need to wash them, which I'll show you now, then I put them in here and I put a towel underneath it and I kind of just let them sit, and my kids come around all day and eat the berries. Okay, open your container of berries and gently, the trick is gently, put them into your bowl of water, and all the dirt will rise to the top. And just see how gently, we're not doing anything that causes the berries to break. See? So I'm just going to kind of swish it around very gently. Like that. See? And then, what I do, see I'm swishing it, what I do is just open up a towel and I just gently, see I kind of swished it around and then I gently lay them out. See, I already feel some of the broken ones, so I know those I'm not going to serve. Okay, there you go. Now I pour this out, and I have a bowl with berries already. Now I just sort of like lift them up gently, kind of like shake them around to get the excess water off, and then I gently put them in here, and that's it. I have my berries, a few of them were mashed. Okay, not from this process, a few of them came in the container mashed. Actually, when you're buying berries, you should not just judge by what you see, you should actually open the plastic container and kind of fiddle around and make sure, because sometimes they put the best berries on top and on the bottom other ones that are yuck yuck, or the middle. Okay, so here are my berries. And see, it doesn't even, oh, a little bit of drips, so I'm just going to add my towel. Okay, so that's my berries. Let's talk, so my berries are resting now, and they're drying. I have ones that are ready, a la Food Network. I already have them drying. Let's talk about the utensils that we're going to need, and then let's get the show on the road. Number one is a removable bottom tart pan. This one is 9 inches. Trick, always have a measuring tape in your kitchen, because when a recipe calls for a specific size, all you do is grab your measuring tape and literally measure it. So I measure until I'm comfortable with the size. At a certain point, when you've been cooking for a long time and you know the things that you have, the pans you have in your house, you'll know, oh, this is a 9 inch, oh, this is a 10 inch, oh, this is a 12 by 13, oh, this is a 12 by 18, a sheet pan, whatever it is. So this way, your recipe comes out accurate, because generally when they tell you a specific size, you want to follow it, because that's the right size for the amount of what you have in your ingredients. Okay, a good knife to cut the chocolate. If you have chocolate chips, that's great, you don't have to cut the chocolate. But if you have a bar of chocolate, I'll show you how to cut it. A wet measuring cup, a dry measuring cup, some sort of spatula, my favorite spatula, some measuring tools, you want a 1/4 of an inch measuring tool, and a whisk. You should have different size whisks. It's worth it to have it, because you'll tend to use it a lot. I use my whisk a lot, and I have little whisks for when I'm making salad dressings. I have bigger whisks when I'm using bigger bowls. So whisks are really a good investment. Okay, a saucepan, a food processor, and another saucepan to use for melting my chocolate. Okay, we're ready to start? Let's go. Let me just make sure I know what time it is. Okay. The first thing you want to do is toast your nuts. So I'm taking my nuts. By the way, the best place to keep your nuts is in the freezer. Nuts get rancid, which means they get spoiled. And you know that by smelling it, and you're like, they don't smell like pecans, they smell spoiled. Throw them out, don't use them. Even if they're roasted or toasted, stick them in the freezer. I actually have a drawer in my freezer that's just designated for nuts. So I open my nut drawer and I get whatever I need. Okay, 2 cups. And you know what? It's okay if it's a little bit more, because so you don't have to level it off. You just sort of eyeball. Use a saucepan that's a little bit, that's bigger than you think, so that you can sort of lay it out. I don't know if you can see. I'm kind of manning this by myself, but here's the frying pan, and I'll just show you. I laid it out. I don't know if you could see this, but I laid this out flat so that every single piece is touching the bottom of the frying pan. And then I'm sort of just going to let this do its thing. All you want to do is kind of wake it up. So as soon as you start smelling, and it doesn't, you want to be sure that it doesn't burn, but as soon as it starts smelling like it's ready, almost, you just kind of, the idea is you kind of want to wake it up. So I already am starting to smell it, because it's kind of like the flavors of the nut is lying dormant in the nut in the raw state. And as soon as you start adding heat, it kind of wakes it up, and all of a sudden the flavors kind of come out and shout hello. So I'm just waiting here to see what you need. Meanwhile, prepare your margarine or butter. Make sure that you have a 1/4 cup, and we're going to use that next. And basically we want to melt it. So instead of using another pan to melt it, I'm just going to use the hot frying pan. So we have our berries. We have our, let's measure out 6 tablespoons of your margarine. I think Okay, it smells really good. It's starting to wake up. Oh, it does smell really good. Okay, so let's start. So this is pretty much enough. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, it's getting hot, like, but you notice how I could still handle it. I'm just trying to keep it flat so that every piece of nut comes in contact with the heated pan. You can also, grab, I'll tell you what's in it. You can grab just a little pan. You can put the nuts on it. You don't need to add oil because the nuts have their own oil, and that's good enough. And then you stick it into a preheated, like 350 oven. Put the timer on start with 5 minutes. Pull it out. If it doesn't look like it's ready, put it back in. But these are great. These little, you can get them at Target. I mean, I don't know if you can get them now at Target, or you can get them online. They're just small. You know what? Let's measure it. Give me a second. I'll tell you what the measurement is. Okay. So I have my little measuring tape, and I literally take it out anytime I get something new. So this is 9. This is a 9 by 13. Gosh, it doesn't look like a 9 by 13. Yeah. So it's a 9 by 13 baking pan, and it's excellent. So I guess it's a quarter of a sheet pan. Really? Okay. All right. Take your nuts while they're still hot and gently pour them in. Now what I'm going to do is, because this is hot, I'm just going to melt the margarine. See? See this? It's going to melt so quickly. I'm going to use my spatula as soon as it's ready. You want to kind of watch it. It doesn't have to be 100, I don't know if you can see this. See, it's even off the fire, but because of the heat, the residual heat, my margarine is melting on its own. So my margarine was actually room temperature. So we talked about this the first time I did a show, I think, that it's always better to use room temperature margarine, except if you're making pie dough or phyllo dough. Okay, so this is, look, okay, that was quick. Let's just move this around, and it has a little bit of the residual nuts flavor. That's good, so the margarine is going to kind of be a little nutty. Now I'm going to stick it in. Be careful, everything's hot. Stick it in. So right now we have the nuts, the quarter of a cup margarine. Now remember, if your tart pan is a little bit bigger, just add 3 cups of nuts and a quarter plus an eighth of the margarine. Okay, so now I'm finished with this. Let me move this away. Okay, and I'll have this ready because I'm going to use this, but not right now. Let's use our food processor. Okay, food processor. Today it's going to work. I don't know why every single time I forget how to work it. Let's get your quarter of a teaspoon cinnamon. Okay. Oh, it smells great. So really, again, the test of knowing if your spices are up to date and not expired, all you gotta do is smell it. And if it has a strong, delicious smell, and it smells like the spice is supposed to smell, you know you've got it right. 6 tablespoons of brown sugar. Okay. Let's put the food processor in. And it's the wrong way. Oh, you gotta love it. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to pulse it because I have more control when I pulse it. So find your power, then find your pulse, and then what you're going to do is you're going to pulse it until it's broken. It's completely broken out. And until it comes together. let's do it a few more times. Okay. Yes, that looks great. So if you look at it, this is how it looks. And let's put it in the tart pan. Okay. So use your spatula, kind of get all the crevices out, get everything out. And now what you're going to do is you're going to put it in your tart pan. So this is how you put it in your tart pan. Grab everything and sort of put it all around the tart pan. And then I'll show you how you can...
Did the melted butter go in this processor, in the food processor?
Yes, yes, yes. So it's the nuts, the melted quarter of a stick of butter, half a stick of butter, I'm sorry. I can't even tell you how many times I get confused and add a stick of margarine instead of a quarter, half. So, but it's okay. It'll just have a little bit more. Okay. So now you're just going to press it in. Could you get me a third of a quarter cup measuring? Okay, here's a trick. You can do this. Another trick is once it's kind of laid out, you sort of press it in. So the first thing I always work on is the sides. And then I go to my middle. So I kind of push from the center and I push it down using a measuring cup. You kind of want to press it firm so it kind of forms a crust. So, and then I'm just going to go around and just kind of make it a little...
Looks very thick.
Thicker. This one looks very thick. It's interesting because, yeah, it's fine. It's good. We like thick. Okay. So I sort of pressed it in. Remember that once you remove it from your tin, you're going to get the shape of the fluted shape. So you sort of want the crust to pick up the shape. Okay, there you go. Look how easy it was. So this really works very well. Now I'm going to stick this into my 325 preheated oven. Be careful because the bottom is removable. So use my, no, I thought I was going to use my foot. Sometimes it works. Okay, I'm sticking it in the middle of my oven. I'm putting on the timer for 15 minutes. And that's done. What you're going to do is you're going to put it in for 15 minutes, and then because everybody's oven is different, you might need more time. Okay. So here's a ready-made crust. This is a square one. So I have lots of different removable tart pans. This one is square. So I did the same thing. I just put it in a square one. This one actually, I made this lemon curd with a delicious crust, and I stick it into the square, and then you put slices of lemon on top. Maybe we'll do it one day. Okay, so let's now do the filling. So your tart shell is in the oven. So take notes so that as soon as it comes out, you'll know exactly what to do. You can actually do this part now, and then as soon as when the crust comes out, allow it to cool, because if it's still warm and you put your chocolate in, the chocolate will melt into the crust. So what I do is I make space in my freezer, and as soon as my crust comes out, I put it on a towel and I stick it in my freezer for like 15 minutes. As soon as it gets room temperature, I take it out and then I pour my crust in, my filling in. Okay, so now this is warm. Let's do our topping. Grab your whip. Measure, see I'm using a wet measuring. Get to 1.5 cups. 1.5 cups of whip. Now, if your tart pan is bigger, by all means use more. Just do increments of another half of this. So I would do 2.25 cups and 18 ounces of chocolate if I had a bigger crust, a bigger tart pan. Okay, so this is 1.5 cups. I'm putting it in. And the idea is you don't want the whip to boil because then it curdles. You want it to just get warm enough that it can melt the chocolate. Now, chocolate melts at pretty low heat, and you always want to be mindful that you don't want to burn your chocolate because then it has that burny chocolate taste. So you're very careful how you do your chocolate. Let me show you how to cut the chocolate. While this is going, and I think that is probably ready, so let's do this fast. Let's kind of wipe this down. And so this is 10 ounces, and I want 12 ounces. So I'm going to add a little bit from here. I figure every row is another ounce. So I'm doing 12 ounces. So now I'm just going to chop it and use the weight of your body. Just keep going. Chop, 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 chop. My whip is boiling. I'm going to take it off. And we're going to stick the chocolate in. Okay? Really the best is to do the chocolate first. Chop the chocolate before the whip goes in, but I didn't do that this time. Okay. Now I'm going to put the chocolate in. Another way to do it is put the chocolate in a bowl and then pour the whip in. But I don't like to do that because then it's another bowl that I made dirty. Okay, now see how quickly the chocolate melts? So you want to grab your whisk. If you have a rounded saucepan, I have a rounded saucepan, but it's just not large enough to put the chocolate and whip in. But the rounded ones are best because then you don't get anything stuck in the ridges or the edges of.
How long does the crust stay in the oven?
The crust stays in the oven, so I put it in for 15 minutes. But, you know, again, everybody's oven is different. Start with 15 minutes. As soon as the crust starts smelling like it's ready, you smell the like caramelized pecan taste, and it has a little bit of color. Pull it out. Look at this. Look how gorgeous. I mean, is this not the easiest thing you've ever done? Okay, so as soon as it's smooth, kind of whisk it until you don't want to add too many air bubbles, so don't whisk it too much. You sort of want to, what you can do is if you see that there are air bubbles, just bang down the bottom and it breaks up the air bubbles. Okay, let's remove this, pull it off the plug, and let's pour it into our shell. So you see how our shell has some, like the edges are already dark? That means it's ready. You don't want it too dark because then it will have a burnt taste. Nuts burn easily, so you want to kind of be careful. Okay, look at this. How beautiful and how easy. Okay, pour it all in. Here you go. Kind of get all of it out. You don't want to waste any of the goodness of the chocolate. Okay. Sort of straighten it out so that it has it. And this will go into the freezer. Sorry, kind of chocolate mess. I mean, I guess it's nothing to apologize for. Chocolate mess is the best kind of mess. It has a little bit of air bubbles, so I'm going to kind of bang it down. Okay, I'm going to stick this in the freezer to set so that I can put the raspberries on top. So I have one in the freezer. Give me a second. Keep an eye on how beautiful this is. I'm going to bring the other one out. Okay. So I'm going to remove this one. That one I'll stick in the freezer. Here is my ready-made tart. So what I'm going to do is I am going to remove it. Look at this. See what happens? You remove it. And if you're nervous about removing it, you can always put it on something like this. And then the side will fall. And that helps remove it. Okay. So now you put it down. You probably should put it on a plate at this point. Now let's do the raspberries. So I'm showing you how to do the raspberries so that when yours is ready and you pour your chocolate in, you stick it in the freezer, then you add the raspberries. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the raspberries, and then as soon as I'm done, I'm going to stick it in the freezer because I like when my raspberries get a little bit frosted. So here's what you do. Start at the ends, and you go all the way around, and kind of choose like yummy, plump raspberries so that, and about the same size raspberries. See, because they're dry, or they're almost dry, they're not discoloring my chocolate. Look at that. So I keep going. Another way to do it, if you decide, if you don't like raspberries, first of all, any berry goes great with chocolate. And this chocolate is bittersweet. So the bittersweetness of the chocolate and the bright sweetness of the raspberries are really delicious. But how perfect. Okay. But if you don't want to use berries, you can just kind of sprinkle some Maldon salt, because chocolate and salt just are best friends. Or what you can do is you can also take a bar of chocolate, and you can take a bar of chocolate and you can use a peeler and you can kind of shave off some pieces. Oh, look how gorgeous. Okay, you can shave off some pieces, and then you have like chocolate curls on the top of your chocolate, because chocolate plus more chocolate is excellent. Okay, so here you go. Okay, one more circle. Let's see. And choose a really beautiful plump one. And here is your chocolate ganache with a pecan crust topped with plump, juicy raspberries. I'm going to stick it in the freezer, and as soon as I'm ready to eat it, I am going to take it out, put it on a nice plate. Actually, like I said, you should probably put it on a nice plate before you put the raspberries on. It's just easier to handle, and stick it in the freezer on the plate. When you serve it, cut slivers, literally thin slices. It's not the time to give everybody a huge piece. It's very, very heavy, bittersweet chocolate. So you cut a little sliver, and then you grab a glass of dry red wine, and you've got yourself a perfect dessert. Or lunch. Nobody's judging here. Enjoy. Shabbat shalom. Grab a piece of matzah to remember that we always have a second chance, and I'll see you next week.